if you're recently diagnosed with celiac disease, you're gonna wanna keep watching because I'm gonna cover the 10 things you need to do immediately after you're diagnosed with celiac disease. If you didn't know, my name is Taylor Silverduke, registered dietitian specializing in celiac disease with over 10 years lived experience with celiac, and it is my passion to help people with celiac disease learn how to live a celiac safe yet fulfilling life. Over here at the Celiac Dietitian, we believe that people with celiac disease can have the most fulfilling lives and do everything they want to while staying celiac safe, and I help show people how to do just that. So today we're going to talk about the 10 things you need to do immediately after a celiac diagnosis to support your healing and safety. But first, I just want to give you some reassurance. If you're feeling lost, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling scared, you're feeling angry, whatever it is you're feeling, it is completely valid. Being diagnosed with celiac disease is super overwhelming. There is so much to take in. There's so much to consider. There is so much to learn, and there are so many ways that it changes your life. So whatever you're feeling, you are completely valid, and there are many celiacs who are feeling the exact same thing. So give yourself the space to feel those feelings, process your emotions, and process this huge life change because it is a huge deal. I also want to say, if your doctor just told you to go gluten-free and that was it, or you had a 30-minute session with a dietitian and it really wasn't that helpful, you're also not alone. We deserve so much better in follow-up care and education, yet so many people don't get it. And if you can relate to that, if you just got a phone call or you were told about your diagnosis in a quick 10-minute session with your doctor, or all you got was a quick session with a dietitian who told you everything you already knew, go ahead and comment below. I'd love to hear your story, and I'm holding so much space for the fact that you didn't get the help that you need. So hopefully these 10 things that you need to do after a celiac diagnosis are going to help you feel more empowered in moving forward and staying safe for the rest of your celiac life. So all of that said, the first thing you're going to want to do when you're diagnosed with celiac disease is learn how to identify gluten on a food label. This is going to be the most important step to staying celiac safe, because if gluten is still sneaking into your food, nothing else matters. You want to make sure you're avoiding the hugest point of gluten exposure with celiac disease, again, which is gluten in your food. So learning how to identify gluten on a food label is so important, and if you want help with that, I actually have an entire 100% free class on how to identify gluten on food labels in the United States using a simple 4-step method. So if you want that free training, there'll be a link in the description box for you to access it. A lot of people find so much relief just watching that one training. It is so helpful in making sure that you know your food is safe in the confusing label reading environment that is the United States. The second thing you're going to want to do when you're diagnosed with celiac disease is make sure you understand what cross-contact is and how to avoid it. So just a brief summary, cross-contact is when allergenic proteins come into contact with food that wouldn't otherwise contain those allergenic proteins, thus making those foods now allergenic. And with the case of celiac disease, cross-contact would be gluten coming into contact with gluten-free food, thus rendering that gluten-free food no longer gluten-free. Cross-contact can sound super scary, and it is, but there are a lot of ways that you can take precautions to prevent cross-contact from occurring in your food, both at home and at restaurants and in other people's homes. If you need help with that, there are a lot of resources out there. Just make sure that they're updated and current with current research. I have a video dedicated to 10 common cross-contact points people with celiac disease miss if you want to watch that. And I also cover all things cross-contact, from setting up your home, whether it be shared or dedicated gluten-free, to enjoying food and preventing cross-contact in other people's homes, to how to prevent cross-contact when dining out in the Celiac Crash Course. It's a self-paced course made by me, a gluten-free and celiac dietitian, to help you make sure you have all of the simple strategies and clear-cut information you need to stay safe in case you are in the category of people diagnosed with celiac disease who got zero help and zero education when it comes to how to stay celiac safe. So I'll leave the link down below for you to check out that course. But the second step, again, is to make sure that you are educated and understand what cross-contact is and you know how to prevent it, because the second most important thing to staying safe with celiac disease and healing is making sure that your food isn't coming into contact with gluten and thus containing gluten that could potentially cause intestinal damage, symptoms, and prevent and delay healing. On that same note of preventing cross-contact, understanding cross-contact, the third thing you're going to want to do is actually set up your kitchen to be safe for you. Whether you're setting up a dedicated gluten-free kitchen or a kitchen that has no gluten in it, or a shared kitchen where you have gluten-free food and gluten-filled food in it, you want to make sure you're setting up your kitchen so that you are staying safe in your home. It is so important. Most of your meals are going to come from your home, that your home is set up to keep you safe. So that is the third thing you're going to want to do after a celiac diagnosis, is to make sure you're setting up your home to be safe. And if you need help with that, again, I also cover that in detail in the Celiac Crash Course, complete with examples and simulations and demos to really give you an idea of how to set up your home to make sure it's safe, no matter if it's dedicated gluten-free or a shared household. Label reading and preventing cross-contact and setting up your home aside, the next step you're going to want to take when you're diagnosed with celiac disease is to learn and get comfortable with speaking up around your needs. Speaking up with celiac disease can feel so uncomfortable, and it is important nonetheless. It's no secret that most people diagnosed with celiac disease are women, and unfortunately we are often socialized to not be a burden, only spoke when spoken to be super polite, to not be accommodated, but instead be accommodating. And so this socialization of us to be quiet and subdued can feel really uncomfortable when suddenly we need to speak up and we need to be accommodated. We need to ask for things. We need to be louder. And so I'm holding space for the fact that if you do identify as a woman with celiac disease, that it is really uncomfortable to suddenly have to speak up and go against everything society has taught us. And it is so important nonetheless. And so getting comfortable with that is super essential to staying celiac safe, because being able to say, no, I can't have that, or ask restaurant staff for specific precautions to make sure you're staying safe, is going to be key to making sure that you're not getting exposed to gluten and you are not delaying healing and you are maintaining healing of your small intestine. And regardless of if you are a woman with celiac disease, there are many other obstacles to speaking up with celiac disease, from people doubting you, to not believing you, to not thinking that gluten-free is a medical diet, and so much more. And so it can be really tricky. It can be really overwhelming. And so first, I just want to reassure you that the feelings that you have around speaking up are completely valid, and acknowledge that it is difficult and it is also important. Some tips I have for speaking up include practicing. With practice comes comfort. So getting that experience with telling people what you need and getting that feedback that they are receptive, or that most people are receptive, can be really helpful in building up that comfort with speaking up. And also being well educated and having the proper skills to keep yourself safe can really serve as a big confident boost when you're having to advocate for yourself with others, because you know that everything you're saying is correct and you know exactly what you need, and you know that this is fact, and so it's easier to speak your truth when you know everything is correct. All of that said, speaking up is tricky, and I give a ton of resources, tips and tricks, strategies, and practice scenarios for you to help build up your skill in speaking up with celiac disease. Again, in the Celiac Crash Course, I probably sound like a broken record, but this is a course designed to make sure that you have the resources, the simple strategies, and the clear-cut information you need for all the basics of celiac disease in the United States, all in one place, if you didn't get it. So if you need that help, again, more information will be in the description box. Once you have learned how to speak up for yourself, it is now time to practice eating outside of the home. Getting comfortable with eating outside of the home is super important, because for most people with celiac disease, it is unrealistic to only eat food that has been prepared at home. So getting comfortable with eating food prepared by your close friends, getting comfortable with teaching them how to prepare that safe food, because it is possible, and getting comfortable with knowing what to ask and knowing what to say to restaurant staff to reduce your chances of getting gluten are all essential to living and thriving after a recent celiac diagnosis. So after you have learned how to identify safe gluten-free food, you've learned about cross-contact, you've learned about how to set up your home, you've gotten comfortable with speaking up, it's now time to apply all of that when eating outside of the home. There are a lot of things to consider with this, but I do cover and give a lot of resources and tips in the Celiac Crash Course, whether you're going to a restaurant or you want to have some guided cooking demos to help teach your friends how to cook safe food for you, or you're going to a dinner party, wedding, conference, whatever it might be. Getting comfortable and getting confident in eating outside of the home is so important. And if you need help with that and you need those simple strategies and resources, again, check out the link in the bio check out my Celiac Crash Course. The next step after a recent celiac diagnosis to take is to make sure that you are being mindful of preventing celiac burnout. Celiac burnout is when you are basically just completely exhausted and tired from making sure that you are staying celiac safe. And there are a lot of causes for celiac burnout, but the two main causes are not having a strong foundation in celiac safety, knowledge, and skill, and doing too many things at once that require you to use all of those skills at once. So if you don't have a strong foundation in celiac safety, it can feel really overwhelming to constantly have to learn and practice at the same time as you move about the world. So for example, if you don't have the skills to properly dine out safely and you constantly have to Google before every time you go dine out, you're constantly having to Google what cross-contact precautions to ask for, what cross-contact points to look for, or alternatively, if you don't know how to find safe food at a grocery store and you're constantly having to Google ingredients and Google if products are gluten-free and have to learn and intake all of this information at the same time as applying it, it can be really overwhelming and it can burn you out quickly. So making sure that you have that strong celiac foundation of safety before you go into or as you move about the world is so important to preventing burnout, because instead of having to Google everything, you know most things, and maybe you have to Google something just to make sure you're right, but you're not having to look up everything, learn everything right off the bat, off the cuff. And that is the first common reason I see people get burnt out with celiac disease. The second common reason, again, like I said, is not giving yourself enough time in between those social food events. So maybe you went out to dinner with friends on Monday, and then on Tuesday you grabbed lunch with your coworkers, and on Wednesday you went to a happy hour after work, and on Friday you had to go to a wedding, and there are just all these things happening at once that are not giving you any chance to just recoup, have a safe meal, reflect, and give yourself that space to just take a breather from having to use and do all this extra work to participate in everyday life that other people don't have to do, then it can quickly lead and add up to celiac burnout. So it's also important to understand what your tolerance and your limit for socializing is, and making sure you're giving yourself that time to reflect and decompress after those stressful food events to make sure that you're not getting burnt out. The next thing you're going to want to do when you're diagnosed with celiac disease is to create a gluten exposure plan. Now, this is for my celiac friends who are symptomatic. I know a lot of you are asymptomatic, so you're just going to want to skip to the next step. But if you're symptomatic, you want to make sure you have a plan in place to take care of yourself and soothe your symptoms that may arise when you've been glutened. Now, there are a lot of things you can do to self-soothe the many symptoms that may arise after getting glutened, and I have a whole video on what to do when you've been exposed to gluten to kind of help guide you with this. So if you need that help, check out that resource down below. The next step you're going to want to take is to learn how to travel with celiac disease. So oftentimes people feel like with celiac disease, they are stuck and all of their travel goals and bucket lists are thrown out the window. That is anything but the truth. It is totally possible to travel the world and see the world while staying celiac safe. And that is the next important thing you're going to want to learn and practice doing when you've been diagnosed with celiac disease to make sure it's not holding you back and you're getting the most out of life. So learning how to travel includes a lot, and I'll leave some resources too down below to help you get started. I also cover this in detail in the Celiac Crash Course if you need that extra support. So the next step is to learn how to balance a gluten-free diet to address any nutrient deficiencies you may have been diagnosed with celiac disease, and any nutrient gaps that commonly occur with a gluten-free diet to make sure that your body has everything it needs to heal and repair the small intestinal damage that occurs from eating gluten with celiac disease. And that involves a lot, and if you need help with that, I also walk you through that step by step in the Celiac Crash Course so that you have those tools and resources to make sure your small intestine is getting what it needs to heal. And again, more information about the Celiac Crash Course will be down below. It's just important that you are making sure your diet is balanced and helping you feel good and heal so that you are recovering from active celiac. And the last thing you're going to want to do after a celiac diagnosis is make sure you're getting the proper follow-up care. There's a lot involved with follow-up care with celiac disease, from follow-up celiac testing to making sure you're meeting with the right professionals if anything is coming back abnormal, to tweak your diet, tweak your gluten-free precautions, tweak any supplements you might be taking. And so it's important that after you have practiced all of that, you're also making sure you're following up with your providers to make sure that it is enough and that your body is responding and your body is healing. Again, that's something that I cover in the Celiac Crash Course if you're not sure what that looks like, and I'll also leave some resources down below on how to find a celiac provider near you. All of that said, those are the 10 steps that people with celiac disease should take after a celiac diagnosis. If you need help with any of it, like I mentioned throughout this entire video, I cover all of it in the Celiac Crash Course, complete with simulations, practice problems, workbooks, ebooks, to make sure you have all the resources you need, all of the simple strategies, and all of the clear-cut information to simplify celiac safety. All of that said, if you found this video helpful, give this video a like and comment down below what step you're on, and hit that subscribe button if you want more help from a celiac specialized registered dietitian, and I will see you in the next video.